The Leominster City Council meeting is brought to you by the generous support of the Service Oil Company, 345R Lancaster Street, Leominster, 978-466-1922.
Evenings of each month at 7 o'clock p.m. Whenever a meeting falls on a legal holiday, it shall be held the following night at the same time. Whenever a meeting falls on the evening before New Year's Day, it shall be held on the next night following the holiday at the same time. No meeting shall be held during the week of Christmas. Before I get into any questions, I'll turn this over to the petitioners, Councilor Bedanza and Councilor Shalafou-Zephyr.
Okay, so the thought process here was to move the meeting time up a half hour. And as we know, there are times when we have a number of hearings and our meeting starts late. And that, in my view, will not be affected. In other words, if we have quite a few hearings, we're still going to end up starting the meeting, whether it's scheduled for 7 or 7:30, the meeting is still going to be late. This will be more efficient when we have a meeting with no or few hearings. And in those instances, it'll just get us started sooner and conclude the meeting earlier. So in some, I would suggest that it'll have no effect on meeting nights when there are lengthy or numerous hearings, and it'll have a positive effect on nights when there are no hearings or few hearings. There was some question about the language with respect to Christmas and New Year's. This is a recitation of the language that comes from the existing ordinance. So the idea here is that it probably would have no application with respect to the sentence that deals with New Year's Day, except for a special meeting. So I believe the language, those sentences, other than the time, none of this language has changed or has any effect on the time of the meeting. There was a question whether we should maintain the language because it's probably fairly old. But I do think the language is applicable because in the past, apparently they didn't want there to be a possibility of there being any meeting on Christmas week or any meeting, special or regular, on New Year's Eve. So I think the language should be maintained.
Okay. Councilor Zephyr is a co-petitioner. Do you have anything to add?
Not really. I think that the Ward 4 Council really covered it in sufficient detail. But again, it's just to give us the opportunity to start the meeting early when we don't have a night filled with hearings. And again, it really will have no impact. I completely agree with the councilor across from me that, we'll just move our meeting. We'll start when we can, which is what we typically do. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Councilor Frieda is the clerk of legal affairs. Anything to add?
I don't have any questions, but I do. When I first started almost 30 years ago, we started our meetings at 8, and we changed it to 7:30. And I absolutely agree that taking another half hour, definitely the right thing to do. So.
Okay. Any other councilors have any questions or comments? Does any member of the audience wish to address the council either in favor of or against this petition? Second time, does any member of the audience wish to address the council either in favor of or against this petition? Third and final time, does any member of the audience wish to address the council either in favor of or in opposition to this petition? Last call for councilors. Anybody?
Yeah,
Councilor Cormier?
I just, to the Ward 4 council, I'm the one that, brought up that concern, about the wording in here. And, I'm not gonna, I don't think it's a huge deal. I'm just thinking, maybe we could have edited this while we, were in the process of redoing it. I just don't understand the part about the special meeting. I think we have language in our charter for a special meeting. And this section, the heading of it is specifically for regular meetings. So, I don't think it's not gonna hurt to leave it in there. It just doesn't make a lot of sense for, a regular meeting because there is no, as I indicated before, there is no way possible that a regular meeting, if you do them on the second and fourth Monday of the month, could ever fall on the 31st, which would potentially be New Year's Eve. But I mean, if there's an appetite to leave it, that's fine, but I think it has no real merit, to be honest with you, that sentence.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Mr. President, I declare the public hearing closed.
Thank you.
So we have another hearing before the Leominster City Council. This is petition 9-19, which is related to the preceding public hearing. Mark C. Bedanza and Susan Shalafo Zephyr request to amend the City Council Rules of Procedure, namely Rule 1, meetings, by changing the time of Monday evening meetings from 7:30 PM to 7 o'clock PM. Do any councilors have any questions or comments relative to this matter? Council Cormier.
Yeah, I would just ask, at this point, why we wouldn't just delete this rule. I mean, if it's already an ordinance, then an ordinance would supersede our rules. You can't pass an ordinance and then make up rules as we go, so I just think it's redundant, and I think we should just delete it, honestly. That's my opinion.
Well, I think, I mean, I agree it's redundant, but I think that it's pretty handy to just have a list of all the rules, whether they're redundant in some respects or not. But I don't know if anyone else,
Maybe what we could do
Wants
too
to,
is to update the rule to reference the ordinance.
well, we could do that. Council Bedanza?
Yeah, apparently, when the meeting time was changed in the past, they did it only by rule, not by ordinance. So apparently, we've been meeting by rule only for a long time. I understand the Ward 3 councilor's position. I don't know. I mean, it doesn't hurt anything. I would say, maybe we could just amend it by adding the language in accordance with section 2-16 of the revised ordinances of the city.
Okay, we can
Does that-
take,
does
we
that
can
work?
take that up during the meeting.
Okay?
Anybody else? Does any member of the audience wish to address the council either in favor of or in opposition to this petition? Second time, does any member of the audience wish to address the council either in favor of or in opposition to this petition? Third and final time, does any member of the audience wish to address the council either in favor of or against this petition? Seeing none, Mr. President, I declare the public hearing closed.
Thank you. A couple of minutes before we begin the next meeting. the planning board. Thank you, folks, for being here this evening.
Thank you.
We'll be going into formal session at 7:30. So before we get into that session, the council will be here for a roll call for the first round. We have Councilor David Cormier, Councilor Pauline
Present.
Cormier,
Present.
Councilor Oettinger, Councilor Bonanza,
Present.
Councilor Feckley, Councilor Shalfo Zephyr,
Present.
Councilor Dabrowski,
Present.
Councilor Frida.
Present.
Aisha Ricker is here. 9 of us are here. You have the floor.
Okay, call Leominster Planning Board to order. Okay, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 members here.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask the city council if someone can make a motion for a recess.
I'll make
So
a
moved.
motion.
Councilor Cormier, Councilor Cormier, thank you. Councilor, can you do the same? Mr. Chairman, can you do the same?
Call for recess. Motion, all in favor, say aye. Opposed, say no. Motion carries.
Okay, our guests will be involved in this discussion that we have at this point. Thank you very much. Again, welcome to the council chambers this evening. This is a joint meeting regarding new views liability to assets. So I'll yield the floor to our guests tonight, if you can introduce yourself. And also, if you can, everyone test the mics, make sure they're all on, please.
Wendy Weeks, Grant Administrator for the City of Leominster. I'm here with Mark Doan from the New View Communities, which is formerly the Twin Cities CDC. I'm just going to talk for a couple minutes, and then Mark is going to talk about the more specifics of the program. Liabilities to Assets program is a new pilot program through the Department of Housing and Community Development. Its purpose is to stabilize neighborhoods and get rid of blight, which may not be obvious, but when you have a property within a neighborhood that is vacant and has fallen in disarray, it can really have a negative impact on the neighborhood. This is a regional application. It involves the cities of Fitchburg and Gardner and the towns of Athol and Clinton. The goal is to rehab 35 to 45 homes in the 5 communities over a 3 to 5 year period. So these will be quality homes as opposed to either demolishing properties or having them sit vacant or absentee landlords that aren't taking care of the properties. So these will be quality homes for working families. As most of you know, we started years ago the Distressed Properties Committee, which involved the Health Department, the Police Department, Fire Department, Building, Mayor's Office. Almost every city department was involved in tracking properties that we felt were either completely in disarray or just on the way. A few years ago, we purchased some software through the Department of Justice program, which allows us to even track further through the police and fire department, repeat calls, what we're seeing in these properties, so we can further designate and track the distressed properties. So this program is the first in a long time that I've seen that would allow cities like Leominster to get funds to do this. I mean, we've been down here the past few years asking for money for demolition of properties. It's an expensive, the last thing we really want to do is demolish a property, but it just comes to that, unfortunately. Some of the private owners walk away. So there hasn't been, since the 90s, there hasn't been any grant programs that will give communities money to demolish properties. So at some point, the city has to make a decision to go through the tax title process if people aren't paying taxes. And that process, Wells Court, we were down here for money, it gets expensive. So this program will actually allow these properties to be rehabbed and put back on the tax rolls, which is really what everybody wants to see. It will stabilize the neighborhoods. We started this process it was earlier this year, probably as early as April or May. The assessor's office, the fire department, police department, planning, building, health, were all involved in coming up with a list of properties. Then we got it down to 7 that we really want to include in this application. The application was submitted. Here's the application. It was a lot of work by New View and their consultants. And so this is really the best opportunity that we've seen in a long time to do something like this. So I'm going to have Mark talk a little bit about the program itself, some of the nuances of it, and you can take it away. But he's worked very hard, and New View has, all of you have worked with New View. They have an excellent reputation in our community with 142 Water Street, the Carter Building, rehabbing individual homes. So we're proud to have them as a partner.
So thank you for taking the time. So this program, the genesis of this program was really a couple of years ago. The Undersecretary of Housing for the Department of Housing and Community Development called me up and said, we'd really like to do something regionally in your area. What are your needs? So we called together planning directors from Fitchburg, Leominster, Gardner, Athol, and Clinton. We had a long discussion, and what all 5 communities agreed on was that they wanted more home ownership, and also that compared to other parts of the state, it turns out we had, as you all know, many more foreclosures and consequently many more homes that were still abandoned. The Department of Housing and Community Development came out and they did a tour of Athol, they did a tour of Gardner, there was a meeting here in Leominster, and from that they came up with a program that they've worked on with us. We went multiple meetings here, multiple meetings in Boston as well, not only with Newview staff, but with planning department staff from each one of these communities, including Leominster. And the program we came up with was to target abandoned homes that have been vacant for at least 3 years, and create a home ownership program so that anybody who earns 110% of area median income could purchase these homes. There would be a restriction that these homes be owner-occupied for 7 years, and after that, they would go. There would be no restrictions on the homes. A person could sell them or do whatever they would like to do, just like anybody else. What's very different about this program than probably any other program that you've heard is that there's an actual new board that's created called Newview Liabilities to Assets. It has a member from each community on that board. So Leominster has a representative on there. And the only properties that can be developed are properties that the city of Leominster proposes to be developed. So if you don't want a property developed, you just don't, the city just doesn't propose it and it doesn't happen. Once that proposal is made, the whole board then considers it and develops a plan to move forward with it. So it's very different from every other, I suspect almost every other program that you have. The funds for this program can't be used for demolition. They can only be used to rehabilitate the program, to rehabilitate them. And the program uses an existing law. It's a pilot program for the state. It's never been done before under Chapter 121A. This is an older statute. And so part of what we've done is make sure that all the properties are vacant so that we're not relocating anybody. That's the last thing that anybody wants to do for this program. Under Chapter 121A, it is possible for Newview Liabilities to Assets to take a home by eminent domain. We're envisioning that mostly as a way to clear title. So a lot of these homes are stuck because there's not a clear title to it. The bank doesn't want to do anything with it. Nobody wants to do anything with it. So we've actually been approached by several lenders here at the hearing that we had in Leominster, it wasn't a hearing, but a meeting that we had in Leominster, where lenders were excited about, great, I can sell the property and not have to deal with all the title issues. So that's a win-win for everybody. The other part about Chapter 121A is that the statute was designed many, many years before Proposition 2.5. And the way, so one of the things it did is it changed the way the taxation works. So during the time that Newview Liabilities to Assets owns the property, instead of being taxed as a property tax, it's taxed as an excise tax. The owner, Newview Liabilities to Assets, sends that excise tax to the state, who then turns around and sends it back to the city. So the city's still getting the tax revenue, but it's coming in as an excise tax at a different formula than originally as a property tax. After that, as soon as we sell the property, it would go back on the rolls and would be taxed just as any other property would in Leominster. So I think that's the key areas that we wanted to mention tonight. 4 other communities have held their hearings on it. A couple of them have already completed the adoption. So we would like to get this program going so we can then start redeveloping the properties. I think Wendy has a list of the properties, and we're happy to take any questions that folks have. And also one of the purposes of the hearing tonight is to make sure that if somebody does have information that a property might be occupied, then that property is not eligible and we need to remove it from the list. Hitting the wrong arrow.
There you go.
So these properties were all selected by a whole team, really led by the Board of Health.
Now, these are, both these two were at least 3-family. I thought the program was for single-family and 2-family.
It's targeted to single and two-family, but it's possible, we did speak to DHCD about the need for, that some of the more distressed properties might be 3 families. It's possible for us to do those also. It might be that we would have to reduce them down from a 3 to a 2 in order to make sure that they'd be a stable owner-occupied building afterwards. I think that's it.
That's, you're missing it, well.
Oh, sorry.
Now, this one, Eaton Place, that looked like it was still occupied. I was there today, and I looked through the window, and it looked like somebody was in there. I don't know if they're squatters, or,
Comes from the health department, the
Yeah.
recommendations, so we'll have them make sure.
why don't you double check on that one?
So those are the properties, and if they're, just so that we're clear, they can remain on the list. If it turns out, for example, that we thought they were all vacant and they're not, then they wouldn't be eligible for the programs. They couldn't be, we don't have to kick them out at this hearing. They can be just never proposed, or if they were proposed, we would still have to verify that they were vacant. And if it turned out that they in fact were occupied, they would not be eligible for the program. So at some, whether it stops tonight or stops further down the line, they would not be eligible for the program.
But we can't change the listings now because these were already proposed in the.
This evening, you can eliminate properties. We can't add properties because of, it's not fair if somebody's, if we added a property and there wasn't a notice, we can't do that. But if we can eliminate a property, if it turns out somebody in the audience says, I live there, you can eliminate that property.
Because there's still an electric meter on that house. So, I couldn't go in, but I was just looking at it,
They were looking at you.
Well, probably. Poor people.
Mark, a few questions. Wendy indicated the Distressed Property Committee, and you were presented with 7 homes. Is that like the limit for the city, or is that are those the homes that were suggested? Do we have another list on top of that? If you could do more than 7?
Yes, so there originally was a much larger list. One of the things about the properties is, and I should have made this clear in my presentation, the homes have to be clustered within a half mile because this is about neighborhood stabilization. So we can't just do one in South Leominster, one in North Leominster. So it has to be within a certain radius of a half mile. There were originally a much larger list. When the Board of Health went out and checked, they found some of the homes, Leominster real estate market is hot. Some of those homes have been picked up and the private market is doing its job. If we want to add additional properties, that's something that could be done at another hearing. Next year, our idea is that we could do that. We could hold another hearing to identify additional properties for the program.
Do you have a value for rehabilitation or a cap on each property, or is it a complete overhaul?
There's not a, we've been going back and forth with that, Counselor, with the Department of Housing and Community Development. So we have an overall budget, we have an overall target of homes that we need to meet, and one of the things we've been talking to them about is that we could find that unicorn home out there that's, all we need to do is buy it, it's in perfect shape, it's just the title's a problem. That would be very inexpensive for us to do, and there might be some that would be much more expensive. Some of the 3 families that were suggested that have just been sitting for a long time, that perhaps we found that many of these homes, they just are always at the bottom of the barrel because nobody's ever been able to invest in them. Perhaps there's a problem with parking, perhaps there's one of these homes where you have to go through the bathroom to get to the kitchen or something crazy like that. So the idea is that we have to mix up mix and match some expensive homes and some inexpensive homes to come up with a program that will work overall for the program.
Are you going to be requesting any funding from our CDBG appropriation, or is this strictly the grant that comes in on this project here for those homes?
Well, we wouldn't refuse any money from the CDBG program, but no, it's not designed to use CDBG funding. It might be that there's something that doesn't work under the liabilities to assets and we need some additional funding for it. But that's not our intention. For one, liabilities to assets has a much higher median, has 110%. CDBG is much lower. So it's not something that we intend to do.
Is there any safety net in the program where you get a new occupant or family that moves into one of these rehabbed houses and it becomes a blighted property again? Is there anything in there to prevent that from happening?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question, Councilor? I'm not sure I understood.
You rehab a property.
Yep.
And then the people that become the new occupants start to put it in dismay once again. Is there anything in your program that prevents that from happening?
Well, the program's designed to prevent that from happening. First, the homes will be sold at an affordable price for somebody earning 110% of the area median income. So they can't be completely maxed out because we want this to be long-term. Second, we'll be doing enough renovations and rehabilitation to each of these homes that for some period of time, whether it's 10 years, 7 years, I don't know exactly, somebody shouldn't be having to make major repairs to the program. The idea is to really take these homes and fix them up so that they will be sustainable for a long-term home ownership. That said, there's of course nothing we can do if somebody loses their job and can't maintain a home. They're going to have a private mortgage. They're going to have a mortgage from a lender just like anybody else. This isn't a special mortgage. They're going to be borrowing money from a lender. It'll be a good lender. It won't be a subprime lender, but nonetheless, they have to pay that money back.
Okay. Are you looking at the sewer and water lines going into the property as well as the building itself?
We found that with many of these abandoned homes, that it's really important that we camera the sewer and the water lines because depending upon how long they haven't been used, we find that there's an awful lot of them where the sewer lines and the water lines are no longer working properly. So that will be some of the scope of rehab that we'll do for all of these homes. I think that will just be part of the general scope that we have to do.
Excellent.
The question I have, on the financing, you said, is that going to be through just an open process, open lender, could be anyone? Is it qualified, or do we have a list of qualified lenders?
Generally speaking, we'll be open. What we do want to avoid is we don't want somebody, and we're still working with the state on this, but we don't want somebody taking out a subprime loan that they then can't afford. So we want to make sure that it's not some kind of crazy variable rate loan that they can get in, make their first few payments, and then it becomes unaffordable for them. So it'll be a balancing act, but it's not going to be simply you have to go to mass housing or some other specified lender. There will be a whole group of lenders, but we will do something to make sure that.
So is there a set of criteria? So right now, there's no criteria on what the lending should be. It's sort of open?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. John, if I can just go around the council, then I'll turn it over to the planning board.
Okay.
All right, I'll start. Councilor Comey, you're all set?
Yeah, I'm good for now.
Okay, Pauline?
What is the turnaround time? This gets approved, this goes through the system. What's the turnaround time for rehab? If the city gets involved in this, I want to know that, okay, New View is going to be involved in this, but I've already got a property, and this is my ward, this is my neighborhood that's got the majority of these properties. So I've been looking at one house in particular that's been empty for three years now, and it's an eyesore. So if New View gets involved, what are we looking at for a turnaround time? Am I going to be looking at an empty property for another 3 years before New View gets involved, or?
That's a good question. I hope not. I hope that it would not be that long. I think one of the things we have to do is balance between the 5 communities, pick out ones that are doable. We're not doing, for example, all 5 in Leominster and then all 5 in Athol and then all 5 in Fitchburg. We'll definitely be mixing it up, and we'll be working with the Leominster representative on our board and making a decision as a board to which ones we want to go for and in which order. And some of that will be how bad the properties are, how expensive it is to turn them around. But we would like to be able to, we want to spend the money as quickly as we can, as does the state. But it is a 3-year program. We don't get, assuming the program gets funded, we would not get all the money in the first year, so we can't do it all at once.
Thank you.
Thank you. Counsel Oettinger?
No questions.
Counsel Bonanza?
Mark, what are the funding sources for the rehabilitation money?
If this gets, assuming it gets approved, the funding source is the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and the proceeds from the sale. So any sale proceeds would go back into the program and allow us to do more homes.
So, that being said, if in fact you're turning over properties after they're rehabilitated and the money is going back to the trust fund,
Yes.
does that mean that these are gonna be, to Councilor Cormier's point, that these are gonna be staged over a period of time? Or are they all likely to happen within a couple of years, or are we talking longer than that?
Well, it'll be at least staged over 3 years and probably more because we'll be getting proceeds from, in year 3 we sell homes, we get proceeds and then we can turn that into new homes. So it may not be these exact same homes. It may be that next year we come here and you find that there are, of the 7 homes on the list, the private market's dealt with 2 of them, we've dealt with 2 of them, but then in a couple of years, there's additional homes that are on the list that we would then add back onto the list.
Do we have any idea what taxes are being collected on these properties currently, if any? Are banks paying taxes on these properties? Do we know anything about the current situation?
I do not know anything about the current situation. I assume in some cases taxes are being paid, and in other cases they are not.
And the formula that the state uses to reimburse us or pay us for the properties that are on this list is going to be somewhat less than actually what their current fair market value is?
The formula, so we met with all of the assessors, so we met with the Leominster assessor, each one of the assessors, we all agreed on a formula which was, it's set by formula that's proposed by the statute, which is 1% of the sales price. That would be what it would be for that period of time that Newview holds the home. After that, they're assessed at the regular value and go back on the rolls. So it's hard to know because we haven't done the assessment for each home, but that would be something that Leominster would consider when asking which home be proposed to be done first. So if there's a home that's not paying any taxes, that could rise to the top of your list.
Okay, that's great. So let me follow up on that. So that means that we have some say or role in what property gets addressed first?
Not only do you have a say, we will not do any property unless Leominster proposes that we do that property. So you have, right now there's 7 properties on the list. If what you want us to do is, whichever property it is, the only property that we can do is the one that you propose that we do. So, just because you propose it doesn't mean that we will do it. So if you want to do a $500,000 property, we would say, guys, look, that's too expensive, we can't afford that. But we will only do properties that Leominster proposes. So if there's one that you decide you don't want us to do, we won't do it.
So if the planning board gives us their advisory opinion, and under the statute, section 6, we're required to report to the mayor whether the council approves it, correct?
Correct.
And once we do that and give you the authority to proceed, we still have a role in determining how this development's going to roll out.
Correct. Because there is a representative from Leominster, the mayor appoints somebody from Leominster to serve as the city's representative on the Newview Liabilities to Assets Board. You'll have access to everything. And again, the bylaws of that corporation say we will only develop properties that the city proposes. So in that way, it's different from, I can't say every other development, but most developments. We've designed this as a real partnership between a city and a community. One of the things that the Baker administration said and that Undersecretary Cornegay and Undersecretary Chan have said is this is a voluntary program. It's something that we're offering to these 5 communities. If you want to accept it, great. If you don't, you don't have to. But it's a real partnership in a very different way than perhaps other partnerships
Yeah,
been
so,
done.
so my sense of it would be that, you know, if I had something to say about it, and there were properties where the bank, oftentimes the banks pay taxes on dilapidated properties, but don't want the properties for whatever reason. So if you've got properties where the taxes are actually being paid, but a property where the taxes aren't being paid, it would seem to me that those would be the ones we'd want to take on first, given the fact that, you know, a $100,000 valuation, just for the sake of argument, we're going to receive 1,000 through this state formula, right? 1%?
For that short period of time.
Right, for that short period of time. And if we're not getting any tax revenue, we're not collecting the tax revenue anyway, it seemed to me that'd be the ones we'd want to attack first. Getting back on the tax rolls, get them, the taxes being paid at a higher valuation as well, right? Once the development is finished.
Correct. Every city, I think, will take their own, some places it might be, there's you know, it's a drug house, it's vacant, not a drug house because it's vacant, but it's a real blight, it's causing lots of issues, so other communities might take other information into account, but certainly tax revenue is one of the critical issues to be taken into account.
But the bottom line is, we do have control over.
You have complete control. Just because you
Okay.
adopt it, you don't have to do any properties at all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Feckley?
Thank you. Yeah, that's a stopgap that I like, that the city council would have, you know, a lot of control over this. You mentioned 110% median household
Correct.
salary, right? So, but what would be the criteria for choosing amongst that group?
We've gone back and forth about that, actually. So we're still not absolutely certain. It could, but I can say that all things being equal, it will end up being a lottery process. So if we have, we still haven't quite figured out exactly, do we do it just like we chances are this is going to go out to sale through a realtor. So it'll just be on the open market. We haven't yet decided, and this is something the board will have to decide. Do we take the highest price, or do we set the price and then hold a mini lottery? If you all, you know, if we set the price for $100 and we have 3 offers at $100, how will we decide between them? I do know that there's going to be something related to family size in there, so we don't want to develop a 3-bedroom house and have it used just by a single person versus a family. The family would have priority over the single person, but other than that, it would end up being just a lottery.
Okay. And you mentioned also that there would be a 7-year restriction on being able to sell the house.
No, a 7-year restriction where it has to be owner occupied. So
I see.
you could sell the home to another owner occupant.
Okay.
But what we don't want to have is to have, particularly a 2-family home, get sold and put back on the rental inventory. After that 7-year period, anything can happen. So during that 7-year period, they could sell the home. It would just have to go to another owner occupant.
Okay. And in Fitzroy, Athol, Clinton, and Gardner, those are the others?
Those are the other
Other
communities.
communities.
Yes.
Have you started the process there? Well, you met with them, but have any homes been identified and any work started, or?
No, we can't do anything until this is one project, so all
Okay.
the communities need to vote and move forward with it before we can
So
even
it's
apply for
collaborative.
the funding. So we
Okay.
can't, there's a whole process that has to happen. So Leominster's, just the way the calendar worked, Leominster ended up being the last community to hold the hearing, so everybody else has held their hearings already.
Okay. And who is the Leominster representative on the board?
It was Kristen, when she stepped down, where the mayor is still, right now, Rick is, and the health department is serving that role, and we're trying to figure out who the best person is. It's great to have somebody from the health department, because they have the other cities have planners on there, so that might be a very good role for right now, but the mayor's still figuring that out.
Okay.
But he's been to all the meetings.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Council, that was a great question on the lottery part. All set? Councilor Shalfo Zephyr?
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. I think this is a tremendous program. It sounds to me like it could go on even longer than the 3 to 5 years, I think. The state has committed to 3 years of funding at $2.5 million a year. Is that right?
That's what they're proposing. Again, we
Okay.
have to get through this process, apply for the funding, but that's what we're expecting, yes.
Okay. But then, given that when the homes are sold and the money goes back into this housing trust, even if the state funding goes away in 3 years, conceivably, New View could keep that project, you could keep it going because you'll have revenue generated from the sales of the homes, right?
Correct. Every dollar from the sale of the home goes back into the program
Right.
and then gets spent again for this program.
No, right, which I think is wonderful because it's got a longer term, I mean, you can see it
Correct.
going longer, which I think is wonderful. So a question just to clarify, so in terms of the control that Leominster would have, the control is really vested in the person who sits on that board, right? It doesn't come back to the city council in terms of making decisions about which homes to propose?
No, I would not be, it would be that person on
Right.
that board would be proposing which homes. So how they interact with the council, that's for, each community is doing that differently, but it has to be proposed by that person there.
Yep. No, that's good. I just wanted to clarify that. That was my understanding. And then in terms of the 7 homes that are now on the list, so if those 7 homes stay on the list, is the plan to get through all 7? And I understand that you said earlier that, some could be bought on the regular market and that other things could happen, but is the plan to get through that list, all of those?
I don't think we know that yet. I mean, we haven't even gone out and evaluated these homes yet, so we need to go in and inspect them and see how much they're going to cost to do. But ideally, yes, we would like to be able to do all of them, but we have not stepped foot in any of the homes in Leominster yet. So we will be doing that and seeing how expensive it is. That's going to be one of the issues.
Okay, great. No, thank you.
Thank you.
All set? Thank you. Councilor Dabrowski?
Hey, Mark, how are you?
Well, Councilor, how are you?
Good. I don't see any downside, to it. But just procedurally speaking, what do you need from us tonight?
And do you want to address that one, or do you want me?
Okay, so I think you've all received, there's something that needs to come from the planning board. There's a recommendation that needs to come from the planning board, and then they need to close their hearing. And then the city council, there's a letter that I think most of you have that needs to just be an endorsement from the city council, and then
Okay.
that's what we need.
And that's it?
Yep,
Okay.
yep.
Okay, thank you.
All set? Thank you. Councilor Frida?
Hey, Mark. Do you have the ability in the lottery to restrict it to Leominster residents?
No. We took that up with DHCD. It was every community asked about that, and that is not something under the fair housing regulations that can be done at this time.
I didn't think so, but being any liability on our part, so we could essentially have 5 people from Athol move into Leominster in these properties.
Correct. Every community wanted that, so Athol wanted the homes for people in Athol. Right. It was something that every community wanted. So if we could have done it that way, we would have. But at this point in time, that's not possible to do.
I would have thought they'd at least do a preference. I mean, if they didn't have anybody, then go to the other communities involved. But, I mean, it's not something you can control. But that would have been a nice feature of it, to be honest. What, if any, do you see as a liability to us?
To the city of Leominster?
Even remotely?
Legal expenses.
No, the legal expenses are borne by New View liabilities to assets. So it takes time right now for you guys to decide to do it. I guess the biggest liability is we really need the city to be a partner. So we need staff time devoted to come to the board meetings. We need thinking time to make sure that we're picking the best homes that will meet the program guidelines. You can't spend whatever, $500,000 on a home. That would be all the funds that are available in one shot. So I think that's the thing that's most important, is really making sure we have a strong connection with city in both choosing the homes and in executing the program. We'll need help from the city to choose the homes. We'll need help to find good contractors. We'll also need help from the assessor's office to get the properties on and off this excise tax as fast as possible. So mostly it's intellectual capital and staff capital from the city. I would say that's the biggest liability. Other than that, I'm hoping that this is a way to take those homes that, as Councilor Cormier was pointing out, have just been vacant for such a long time and have been a problem for the neighborhood. We can finally take them that are sort of at the bottom of the barrel and fix them up. So if they don't have the adequate parking, we can take that 3-family, convert it to a 2-family. All of a sudden now it has adequate parking. It can be owner occupied. It can help stabilize the neighborhood. So somebody will invest in the home next door. But it is going to take real help from the city to help us to identify the right properties and march through the process, because it's not just a developer coming in and taking care of everything. It's a real partnership.
I don't consider staff time or any of that a liability. I wasn't even close to referring to that.
Bill Mitchell's been involved in this right along, and he's like jumping for joy over this program because he's just so, because even if someone is paying taxes and the building is falling apart, it's still just a drag on the neighborhood. So to get those, really solidly back on the tax rolls and help the neighborhood is clearly a benefit.
But you still have to go, the friendly domain, eminent domain taking could be prolonged. I mean, you could have somebody who just doesn't want to sell it. I mean, most of the time it's going to be a bank, so that shouldn't be an issue. But, I mean, how much do you pursue that? Because that could get expensive if you kept, challenging friendly taking.
So obviously the first one we're doing is not going to have eminent domain involved with it. In order to have eminent domain, we have to get permission from the state. Unlike a lot of eminent domain takings, these are, relatively speaking, particularly if it's a 1 or a 2-family home, there's a market value for that. Maybe you're off a little bit. Maybe it's $20,000. But it's not a piece of commercial real estate that can have a wildly fluctuating value. So we feel as though the eminent domain process could sort of more be dragged out by legal time, but that the actual liability is not. It's going to be relatively easy to understand what that would be. But that certainly would be something that we would consider. Again, there's something we would work on with the city. If there really is a really difficult home, that the issue is somebody doesn't want to sell it, we'd take a real hard look at that before we decide to go forward with it, because it could just tie us up for a really long time and nothing would happen. And going back to Councilor Cormier's point, it would just be sitting, well, actually, we would take the home and we'd be fighting out in court afterwards. So the work would be done, the property would be purchased, but we'd be fighting it out in court. And that's not what we want. We're really hoping to use this as a way, the Attorney General program, which I know the city participates in, it's clearing title and putting it back on the tax rolls.
So you're doing appraisals on all these properties you identify?
We're working through that. Certainly if it goes through eminent domain, we'll have to do appraisals. My understanding is we would have to do appraisals. I'm not quite certain what happens if somebody agrees on a price.
I would think if it's eminent domain, any type of taking, you need an appraisal.
Yeah, I'm not quite familiar with all that yet. But yes, we are working through with the state exactly what are the procedures. Do we have to do an appraisal before we acquire each property? There's pluses and minuses to doing that.
And the other thing, it was mentioned, just looking at it briefly, they're using the term report, city council report, planning board report. They're not saying a statement, they're saying a report. And I'm just curious whose responsibility that would be, for a report. Like it says, following the hearing, planning board and city council must issue a written report stating eligibility.
So the planning board so Chris Ryan wrote the report, and the planning board, you have it, correct? Have you brought that up already?
No.
At the meeting, though, did you discuss?
No.
Okay.
We'll bring it up at the next meeting.
It's Monday.
We have a meeting Monday.
Okay.
So that would have to be done, and then the city council, how extensive a report does that have to be?
We have a draft of the reports already.
I know there's a template of a statement, Is that considered the report? It's not really a report, it's a statement?
Yes. Correct.
Or is there anything more required of us?
The planning board has a report that they give to the city council, and then the city council endorses that report. So the draft of the planning board report is,
It says, following the hearing, planning board and city council must issue a written report.
That's the report. So it would essentially end up being a joint report.
Okay.
And the city council would just do an endorsement letter of the same report.
All right, so the overseer of this project, I would assume, because it's DHCD, would be the planning board,
So we don't need this.
and whoever sits on that board, representing Leominster, right?
More or less, yeah. I think
The planning
that's how I
board,
understand it.
planning board's report is advisory to us.
I'm sorry?
It's advisory to you guys.
It's advisory to us.
Right.
so then you can accept.
Well, oversee, advisory, same thing.
Yeah.
All right, and I have, outside of the process and everybody learning how the process goes, I certainly have a ton of trust in you, Mark, and past CDC, Twin City CDC and New View now, so I'm comfortable with that.
Thank you very much. We are working through that. So just to be clear, the planning board will issue an advisory, issues its report to the city council. The city council then decides whether you endorse that report or not. You send that to the mayor, and the mayor then reports to DHCD what the city's position is on all of this. So there's 3 places where it can be turned down: planning board, city council, and at the mayor level, and at the state level as well.
Has this program been done anywhere else in the state yet?
No, this is a pilot program. It's brand new.
This is your draft,
It's the
correct?
first time it's been done
I mean, I should.
in the state at this level, where there's multiple communities involved using this chapter of the law. So we're very excited to be able to bring it here. And I think it's, again, because in some ways because our area of the state got hit so hard by the foreclosure crisis compared to other areas of state, that's why planning members from each of the communities said, this is what we need here, is we need some homeownership help, particularly in these core neighborhoods that just, the real estate market is strong now, but when the next cycle comes along, we know it's going to be a tougher go for those neighborhoods.
So this is the only project going, this, for the pilot?
This is a brand-new pilot for the state, so we're spending a lot of time in Boston working, and they're spending a lot of time in your community as well, I should say, working to make sure this works out.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Board members? Frank's got a question.
Mr. President?
Let's stay right here for 1 second. Go ahead, Frank.
Okay, just a quick question to Mark. Yeah, when you had mentioned the resale of the property during that 7-year period, you said the property could be sold to a new owner as long as it was owner occupied. But I'm reading the thing here, and I just want to clarify that. And it says the program will support the purchase and rehabilitation, wrong paragraph. Purchasers will have to agree to live in the newly renovated property for at least 7 years. So is that saying it's got to be part of the purchase agreement, that they have to stay there for at least 7 years?
That probably was not worded properly.
Okay.
So the idea is, we want them to know that they can't just take the home and flip it. The issue is that chances are we're going to be spending more rehabilitating these homes, and they're going to be sold at a lower price that somebody could just turn around and make money on the sale. So the idea is they don't have to live there for 7 years. It has to be owner occupied for 7 years. If not, there's a portion, there's a payback to the state of extra money that went into the home is how it will work. But if they sell to another income qualified owner occupant, they would be able to receive some of the appreciation on the value of that home, and the new owner would stay there for the remainder of that term.
So they could flip it, but the state would recoup some of the money by the increased valuation.
we're hoping that they don't flip it. We're actually designing the program to try to really discourage people from flipping it. We don't mind if somebody sells it to another owner occupant. These are designed for owner occupancy. So if somebody has to move or wants to move, that's fine, but we want them to sell it to another owner occupant. We can't stop them from doing that, but we are working hard to make that. That's the objective of the program, is to increase owner occupancy in some of these tough neighborhoods.
Thank you.
Couple more questions here. Councilor Bonanza?
Mark, I like the idea of this, and I noticed from the statute that the planning board has 45 days from this evening to issue its advisory report to us. Is there a time sensitivity to this at all?
Yes, we want to get this done, this month. I guess part of it is that was designed, Chapter 121A is designed for a developer coming in where there's not cooperation with the city. In this case, we've been cooperating with the city. We designed the program with the city all along, so we're hoping that we can get through the process much more quickly than that. You could take, we can't do anything about the statute, so that's the way the statute works, but we're really hoping to be able to complete this process in October, because we want to go and start acquiring homes and get things going.
Okay.
On that note, the clerk actually prepared a letter of endorsement by the council if the council voted in favor of it tonight at the regular scheduled meeting to help you. We understood that it was very time sensitive, so that's why we moved forward. I can have the clerk read the letter that she wrote, so everybody has a chance to hear it. So Mark, what's gonna happen is, John, when is your next planning board meeting?
Next week. Week from tonight.
What's the date on that?
October 1st.
That's the 1st.
Okay, so we're not meeting until the 8th again. 9th, I'm sorry, right, correct, 9th. All right, so do you feel confident that the board's gonna be able to move forward with an advisory recommendation of the council at that point?
Yeah.
Okay. So Mark, is it time sensitive beyond that, as far as being able to get back to you on the 9th?
The 9th would be fine,
Okay, so,
Counselor.
all right, okay.
Yeah, primarily is that we wanted to find out about the program was tonight, to get it, make the presentation, be able to ask the questions and get those things taken care of. Then we can act on it. We'll go forward to getting the report written, and I hope to have the report written and presented to our board for discussion at our meeting, so it'll be on our agenda, okay, next week.
Okay, and that'll be forwarded down to the council at that.
And then
after
it'll be
your meeting.
forwarded to the council after that.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Frida, you had a question?
Yeah, just real quick, and I'm sure it goes without saying because it's DHCD, but there's no allowance for profit from one seller to the next, or it's very limited.
Correct, it will be limited. We don't want this to be a program where you buy a home and you're really just renting it for that 7 years. So there is some appreciation that you can get, but we want to limit that appreciation so that it's fair. Both
Be similar to a 40B project
yes.
in terms of profit.
Yes, exactly. We're limiting, for that 7 years, we are limiting the profits that they can get. After 7 years, we feel like, and all the counselors recommended this, all the planners recommended, everybody to the board said, look, after 7 years, somebody's lived in the home, they deserve to, it's a home just like any other home. They should be able to get everything they can from it, and which should be turned back to the private market, because that's what this program is designed to do, is to help private markets work.
So there's no restrictions after 7 years on profit?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
As that's concerned, I'd worked years ago on, with Habitat, and I'd suggest you look at their program, because they do the same thing, and they have quite heavy restriction where they build a home and they put all the money into it. Most of the time, these people are buying the houses cheaper than what Habitat cost them to build it. And then the market rate, because everything is built up, the values jump quite considerably, but Habitat, you cannot sell the house if you, I think theirs is 5 years, it could be 7 also. But if you sell it, as they concern, at the same rate that you bought it at, so that you can't flip it. So if you bought it for $110,000 and you had it for 5 years, they will give you interest on your money, okay, what you paid, but you can't sell it for more, for a profit. So that's, I'm not exactly sure how it works. It's been quite a few years since I've worked on that, but it works out like that. So you can't flip it. And they have some
And most of
pretty
these,
strict rules in that.
most of the projects that I'm aware of are the same. You know, once you live in it, you have to, if you want to sell it, you have to sell it to another person with, following the income level. And it has to be owner occupied. And there's just a percentage of the profit, not be able, after 7 years, they can be given a break for 7 years and they make a profit on the property? I'm not quite sure about that.
Well, one of the things we could explore, all the councilor, every member of the board, every city member of the board really wanted a very limited restriction. The state worked very hard to create that limited restriction. We can see if it's possible for Leominster to create a greater restriction, if that's what Leominster would like to do, to promote affordability rather than homeownership. I have to bring that up with the state, but presumably, for example, Councilor Marchand had suggested CDBG funding, so presumably if the city put a little bit of money in, they would then have a stake and could create a longer deed restriction if that was something that the city wanted to do.
I would certainly push for that, I can tell you right now. I mean, the market is so cyclical. I mean, somebody could be making $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 at the end of 7 years. And I'm not sure that's affordability in my book.
Correct. This program was not designed for affordability.
Right.
It really was designed for stability of neighborhoods. So that's why
Okay.
they have to be within a certain radius. So that's why we can't do, you know, that home way down on Central Street and then another in North Leominster. They have to be
In the
connected
target
because the
area.
idea is we're trying to bring up the value of a core neighborhood that has had trouble. And so what the board members from each of the cities said was, well, if you're trying to bring up the values in a core neighborhood where there's concentrated blight, we shouldn't be having restrictions. Now, again, if Leominster would like to, we can go back to the state and ask them, would you like, you know, is it possible for the city, for a particular city to have less? You're the first person that has brought that up, Councilor. Everybody else has been pushing for the other direction. But we're certainly happy to bring that up and to see if that's something that wouldn't be a program regulation, but could be a gloss from the city of Leominster. I know that the state oftentimes, as you said, wants more affordability, and they might be very open to that. I just don't know.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. You don't discourage home improvements, do you? Say they want to fix that white picket fence and put in sod with a nice flower bed and maybe a single garage or an addition.
Actually, we discussed that just today, Councilor, so no, it's more complicated than you think, but we want to design the mortgage so that if somebody has to borrow money to, in your example, put on a new garage, that they would be able to borrow money to be able to put on that new garage. It's more complicated than it seems, but that's how we want to design the program to be able to do that.
Okay.
Again, that would just be for 7 years. After 7 years, unless there's something new that happens here, they'd be able to do whatever they would like with the property. What we do want to discourage is people just taking equity out of the home and spending it on a vacation.
Okay, thank you. Just make sure you have something in there for the young couple that are going to be having twins in those little Cape Cods.
Yes, exactly. Well, we would not.
Okay, John, you have anything from the planning board?
Well, I'm gonna ask them.
Go ahead.
Okay.
You know, one statement, that's
So-
7 years,
It's a long time.
that's in its entirety. So if I was the owner occupying the property, and I had bought it or purchased it, I sold it, after 3 years, there's still only 4 years left in your trust.
That's correct.
Okay, so I wanted to clarify that. And then I wanted to ask the question, and I know I read it somewhere about how Leominster got 7 homes. I mean, because each community was allotted a certain number of homes or a certain number of dollars.
Neither. Each community went out and searched for homes within a half-mile radius and picked the ones that they most wanted to put on that list. So this was all driven by the city of Leominster, so different cities have different number of homes. Some
So that
Some
number's
had fewer,
arbitrary.
some had
Yep.
many, many more than that.
Right.
Some of it is really that Leominster's housing market is fairly strong, so to be able to find a home that's been vacant for 3 years and meets all the other criteria, there are just fewer of them in Leominster because the housing market is a little bit stronger here, for example, than in some of the other communities.
Pat,
Just quickly, in regards to the process by which contractors are gonna be,
Pat, you're gonna have to speak up a little bit more because you don't have a mic.
Yeah.
just wondering if you've discussed the process to identify contractors to do the actual work on the properties.
We've not yet gotten that far yet. Our hope is that we would have local contractors doing it so that we can be working in multiple communities simultaneously. So, you know, Athol to Leominster isn't exactly, it's not far, but it's not so close either that we're not necessarily gonna just have one contractor do it. It's certainly something that we're gonna go out to bid to make sure that the dollars are spent well, but we envision this being done by local contractors because these are gonna be relatively speaking, small jobs.
Paul? New View themselves, do you work on an administrative fee or is a set percentage of the total, or, you know, I know you're not doing it for the goodness of your heart.
Actually, so right now, the way that we're working on this is the state is just reimbursing us at an hourly rate. It's a pilot program. We want the program to succeed. If it works well, then we would do it some other way too. So that's how we've agreed with the state as a fair way to do this, that we would just be reimbursed at an hourly rate for our time.
Okay. And you said when the home was sold, the money went back into, so it goes back into the state trust fund?
Correct, and then becomes part of this program again. So if we, if there's $100 that gets from the proceeds of the home, from the sale of the home, that $100 then gets respent in the liabilities to assets program.
For this area?
For this area,
It
correct.
wouldn't be for the state as, well, there isn't anybody else in the state.
Correct, it would
at
be
the time.
spent in this area.
Okay.
In this area, is that Leominster or is that?
That's the five communities.
We haven't gotten that far yet, but for right now, it would be those 5 communities, so we haven't quite gotten that far yet, but we want to do it in some way that's equitable between the communities, whether that's number of homes or dollars. I don't think we've quite gotten that far yet, but we will do it in some fashion that's equitable.
Okay. You mentioned the lottery, and I had a question about that because we get involved with that in other projects. And it always seems to be an issue with the lotteries. Have you set up the criteria for that yet? You had mentioned sometime it was gonna be on the open market, but then people have to have the 110% of the, of their median for that city. Okay, town, right? So Leominster is different than Fitchburg, Fitchburg is different than Gardner.
Correct, partially correct. So there are, the 110% area median income is based on wherever that city is. So I think Clinton is one, Athol is a second one, but I think Gardner, Fitchburg, and Leominster are all the same. And our instinct right now is to put them on the open market. We think that's the fairest way, that we would then accept a bid at such and such a date and such a time. What we still have not yet decided is, do we let the price just climb as high as possible, or do we cap it? If we cap it, then we need to have some way to distinguish between people who bid all at the same, same amount. So we have to figure out how we're going to do that. That would be the case where we would have a lottery. The disadvantage of that is you end up with a lottery. The advantage of it is that the home won't get priced too high. Somebody, I think Councilor Marsh, one of the councilors asked me, how do you make sure it's not going to go back and get back to the bottom of the barrel again? And one way to do that is to make sure that the mortgage payments are affordable. So that's the advantage of capping the price. And then you would have to go to a lottery or some other way to distinguish. So one way that we want to distinguish is based on family size. And then after that, if you have 2 families the same size offering the same amount of money, we would then go to a lottery at that point in time.
Yeah, because if you have it on the open market, it could be bid out over the 110%, and then the people don't become qualified.
Correct. So,
So the two statements don't add up. So it's gotta be some kind, and I didn't see anything on a mention of how you're gonna work the lottery. And that's a concern, because I know of issues that we've had before.
correct, that's something that the board will work out. It's actually, we do, in the application, there is an affirmative fair housing marketing plan that's in there that talks about this, and that'll be something that the board will work out as one of those details as we move forward to figure out exactly how to do the lottery in a way that's fair and meets meets all the different competition. But there won't be, so we have to work that out yet.
Okay. I don't think I have any more questions. I know the planning board has a set criteria of things that we have to look at, and we know what that is, and we can look at each house. And I'm gonna have to rely on the committee to get that information back. But one of the criteria on there was the last one, that it was not occupied. And like I said, I think it was 5 Eaton Place. It looked like it was occupied. So we're gonna have to identify that and verify it some way. The others didn't look like it. Okay. I don't have any other questions.
I've been privy to 3 of them since 1985. And I actually, as a housing inspector, spent 5 years going through each of those, and they're still in that kind of condition, so it's gonna be great to fix them up.
Oh, yeah, some of them definitely need it. It's been quite a while, and they definitely need the work, and, that was the only one that I had any question on.
There was a house on Fifth or Third that had a car parked in the parking driveway, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, it was probably a neighbor using the driveway.
Maybe,
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Yeah. That's where the Board of Health comes in kind of handy right now, because they have a history on these properties, as far as the state sanitary code. So they could probably investigate the occupancy qualification. We good?
I think we're good.
Okay.
Oh, the one other question I had, that criteria of half mile, that came from the state?
That was actually worked out, that was one of the pieces that we worked on very hard. Each of the representatives from the cities and towns and DHCD. So DHCD said, this is about stabilizing neighborhoods, and so each city then came up with its criteria for where it could be. It didn't have to be just a circle. It could be, an oval or a square or something, but they wanted them to be relatively concentrated. So that was what the idea was. So it could have been one long, if you just had, Leominster doesn't have this, but if you just had one long street, that also would have been okay. That would have been concentrated even if it was more than a half a mile.
Okay. All set, John?
I'm all set.
Okay, council's back in session. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Council Shalfo Zephyr seconded. Council Feckley, all those in favor? Those opposed? We've adjourned. John?
I have to close my meeting.
Good, that's it.
Okay, a motion is in order to close the planning board meeting. Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, call for the vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Motion carries.
Thank you guys for coming down tonight. Really appreciate it.
Mr. President,
Council Frida?
We need the
it's a
public
public
hearings.
hearing. Do we have to allow anyone to speak?
Oh, yeah?
Yes.
Good idea.
Yeah, we don't have to, our meeting can adjourn, we can hold a public hearing.
Correct. You didn't close.
We haven't
We
closed the
need to
hearing
hear
yet.
it with the,
No, we gotta.
This wasn't a
Yeah.
It
hearing
was a
tonight?
joint meeting of the planning board. It's gotta be a public hearing of the two.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so you can hang around. We'll open it in a
We need to
second.
reopen the meetings.
Yeah.
We'll open our
leave.
regular meeting, adjourn, and then we'll open both meetings.
Okay, so can we open that meeting again? All right, the council's open. John?
Make a motion to open the public hearing.
Okay, now.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Motion carries.
So the great thing to this is I now have to close the meeting again. So, do I have a motion to close the meeting? Seconded? Okay, we're closed. Can you close yours, please?
I don't have, I'm all
Motion
set.
for a recess. Motion for a recess, Mark.
No, we
I have to open a city council meeting
We
right
don't have to do
now.
anything.
Okay, you're good.
I don't have
All
to
we
do
have to
anything.
do is,
Next week.
Okay,
we closed our public hearing
correct. No,
momentarily.
Right.
We'll adjourn, we'll open our regular meeting, then we'll
Yeah.
go into recess and reopen our public hearing.
I gotcha. Is that how we ended up getting
Yeah,
through?
we're all set.
Okay.
No, we're still open.
City council meeting
So you guys have to stay here.
is now in
No, we have
session.
to stay- we
Please
have to
stand and
stay
join me
here.
in
You
a
have to
salute
stay
to the
because we
flag.
have to take the hearing from the public.
Here we go. I pledge allegiance to the flag
One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ours is not closed.
Okay, we'll take a roll call vote, beginning with Council David Cormier.
Present.
Council Pauline Cormier.
Present.
Council Odinger.
Present.
Council Bonanza.
Present.
Council Feckley.
Present.
Council Shalfo Zephyr.
Present.
Council Dobrowski.
I'm here.
Council Frida.
Present.
All 9 members are present. Does the chairwoman of records have a report?
I have the minutes of the regular meeting of July 9th, 2018, Mr. President, but I just received them this evening, and there were quite a few votes that evening, and I was not present, so I would like to review them very closely, and I'll make
Fine.
a report at the next meeting.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion for recess?
So
Council
moved.
Bonanza, seconded. All those in favor? We're in recess. I have to open the meeting up. Oops. Okay. City Council special meeting is now reopened, and we're going to hold the public hearing. Is any member of the audience, would any member of the audience like to address the council on the New View property? Come right up to the mic if you like, ma'am. If you can state your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, yes, my name is Jane Kennedy, and I live at 9 Morton Street here in Leominster.
Do you have any idea what we're doing tonight? Because we need help.
Well,
It's a process.
I just wanted to add, one of these properties, I'm an abutter.
Yes.
It is an eyesore. It does take down the neighborhood. I was a mortgage lender for 35 years, okay? I think sounds like a good program from everything that's been discussed. And I think the city would benefit by engaging in a partnership with New View. I mean, vacant buildings. My house was broken into a few years ago. So having a vacant building next door doesn't help. And I've lived in that neighborhood for 45 years. I'd like to see it come up to the standard that it is. Most of my neighbors are here. It's a good neighborhood. And I don't want to see it go down. I think rodents are probably living in the property at this point. And I just want to say that, I think it benefits everybody. And 7 years as owner-occupied, that's a win-win as well. A lot can happen in 7 years, and then why wouldn't you want to open it up to the regular market so that people can benefit from home ownership? Isn't that what everybody wants, home ownership? Maybe start out in a multifamily home, take their proceeds, and then buy a single-family home? That's the American dream. So basically, that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you
It's
for
just
coming out tonight. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
But I really think it's a win-win.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Would any other member of the audience like to address the council? Come on up, sir. Again, if you can just state your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. Francis Arsenal, 25 Fifth Street, Leominster. I'd just like to say that my house isn't vacant and it's not abandoned. I was in the process of renting it for sale, and I went through a major medical procedure. I'm just coming off of the end of that, and I am going to continue readying the property. I have several parties interested already. I got another offer yesterday. So,
What was your address again?
25 Fifth Street. And with the permission of the council, may I pass out an affidavit on that property?
You certainly can.
Sure.
There you go. Thank you very much.
So, may I ask you a question?
Sure.
Your property was placed on this without your consent, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Would any other member like to address the council? Second call, would any member of the audience like to address the council? Third and final call? If not, the hearing is closed. Thank you.
Okay.
Close yours.
Close our hearing. We're going to we continue our hearing to the first at
So moved at
6:30. Motion made and seconded for to continue to October 1st at 6:30. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Occasionally got one that wasn't vacant, and we've,
Find some more, that's
people
all.
come out and say they're in favor of it.
Yeah, that should,
Yeah, that's exactly why. We're just, the Board of Health does their job, but they sometimes make a mistake on something.
This meeting of the council is adjourned. We're going to go back to the regular scheduled meeting in a moment. Please, thank you.
Shouldn't the planning board have asked any questions?
We haven't had any guidance on all on this.
Sure, Mark.
Yeah, but public hearing, the public hearing. I thank God.
Is that been, have they chosen anybody yet? Or are they still working?
This is an opportunity for any member of the audience to speak on any matter specifically listed on the council agenda. Speakers will be asked to come to the microphone and state their formal name and address along with identifying the specific item or items they wish to address. Each speaker is respectfully asked to keep their comments within a 2-minute time frame. The council will not be responding or answering any questions. However, at the discretion of the council president, clarification may be given. The first person, Janet Pulteney.
That's me.
Did I pronounce that right?
Yeah, that was very close.
Okay.
Janet Pulteney.
Pulteney, thank you.
Yes, and I reside at 36 Burridge Avenue. And I just want to thank Gail Feckley and Sue Shalafo for putting on the request after our denial of our speed bumps. We still feel that something should be done, and if the speed limit would help, and at this point, we think anything would help. I really think that we should try to go forward with that. And there's still a problem with the speeders coming down Main Street and also coming down from Pierce. In fact, now that school's in session, it's actually incredibly more dangerous. There's school buses, the kids are trying to walk up the street, and the cars are flying down. And I know we're not in a school zone per se, but because Johnny Appleseed School is right up the street, all the parents are picking up their kids, they're leaving them off, and they're flying down Main Street. And then when they get to that shortcut, there they go again. They fly down Burridge Ave, and they're not even looking. So again, I want to thank you for allowing me to speak, and certainly for trying to do something to help us with this problem. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Phyllis? Is there a Phyllis? It looks like Gamble on Water Street. She may have spoken already. Okay, thank you. Al Hood? Al Hood?
Al Hood Jr., 32 Burridge Avenue, Leominster. We were here a couple months ago and tried to get something done on this, and I guess everything we asked for is pretty much out of the question, but I'd like to know if we can get another count on the cars that use that road, because that count that was in the Champion paper was way off. And I mean, we can sit there and count cars all day long, and it's gonna be way more than what that time period between the 17th and whatever it was of July. If they set that up on the upper side of Manasco, is that how you say it, Muskoma, they'll find that there's a lot of cars that come down around the corner and come up to that street, and they skip around that particular thing that they had on the telephone pole. So I think that somebody's gotta relook at the number of cars and the speed. The speed thing was way off too. And 2 cars over 45 miles an hour, you can sit there for half an hour and see more than that. So I don't agree with Officer Kinney or Lieutenant Kinney or whatever it was that put out those numbers. But I really think that they need to relook at that amount of cars that are traveling that road. And hopefully some of you people have come up and sat there for a little bit just to see 3 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 7 in the morning, 8 o'clock, whatever times people can come up there and just sit on the side street and watch what happens. But I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate that. Would any other member of the audience like to address the council?
Yes, my name is Ralph Poltney. I live at 36 Burridge Ave as well. I know there's been a proposal for reducing the speed. And along with the reduced speed, I would like to see the sign with the warning lights as well. Because as I stand in my driveway watching these cars coming from both directions, as soon as they slow down. So I think a flashing warning sign to grab their attention and make them think about what they're doing would really be helpful. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Would any other member of the audience like to address the council?
Hello, Michael Stassen, 893 Main Street. Really minor thing, but it's bugging me. There's a typo in the regular meeting thing. Fourth should have a U in it. Otherwise, I'm in favor of making it earlier.
Thanks. Oh, my goodness.
Oh, section 2-16.
I'll be looking forward to the school committee agenda, sir, which I will dissect. This is the old English way of spelling. Would any other members of the audience like to address the council? Second time, third and final call. If not, the public forum is closed. Thank you. We're now back in session. We'll begin with communications from the mayor. Yep.
Thank you, Council President. C18, Dean J. Mazzarella, relative to the appropriation of $455,000 to be made to the debt service principal expense account, same to be raised by fiscal year 2019 revenue, regarding National Grid rebate, $223,000, MAPC rebate, $232,000, with a grand total of $455,000.
Communication 18 is referred to the chairman of finance.
Thank you, Mr. President. First time on the agenda. Regular course, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Regular course on communication 18. Now move on to matters before the city council. We'll begin with the financial report. Is the chairman ready to report?
Yes, Mr. President. We began the fiscal year on July 1 with a balance in the stabilization account of $15,113,865. We transferred both interest earnings and an appropriation totaling $4,019,420 into the account. And we have appropriated or have pending before us $837,000 in transfers, leaving a balance of $18,296,285.
Thank you very much. We'll begin with communication 16. Is the chairman ready to report?
Yes, Mr. President. C16, Dean J. Mazzarella, relative to the appropriation of $200,000 to the landfill expense account, same to be transferred from the stabilization fund, R.E. Mechanic Street landfill repairs. We have a letter that was sent to us by Mr. Knuth from the Health Department relative to some repairs that are necessary at the capped landfill. And I see we have Mr. Benavides and Mr. Knuth with us. Does anybody need information that we would like to go into recess, or?
It's great to see them here.
Yes, it is.
In the middle of our session, we're just gonna have to hold off 1 second, gentlemen. Mr. Chairman, would you like to recess?
Well, if these fine gentlemen made the effort to come here, I think we should.
I have no problem with that at all.
Second.
We have a second? All those in favor? We're in recess. Thank you for being here.
Sure. All right, so as I understand it, Chris, this was sort of time sensitive and you wanted to get this rolling. So the original communication came down from the mayor for $200,000 at a time that we didn't have responsive bids yet.
That's right.
In the interim, since this has been pending and was first introduced on our calendar, there have been responsive, at least one responsive bid.
We got two, actually, and this is low bidder.
The low bidder is $243,000, thus the request to amend the communication. And as we all remember, Mr. Benavides has been in front of us on a number of times, I think back in the fall of 2016, talking about the fact that there were going to be, we authorized money at that time to do the work necessary to get the bid docs out, and their firm is also going to be responsible for overseeing the construction necessary to repair the landfill. So I'll open it up to you, gentlemen.
You've
with
just
respect
about
to.
covered it all there, sir.
I did. I tried to make it succinct.
It was good.
All right, well, seeing we have them here, do any councils have any questions of either of these gentlemen? And the lowest bidder for $243,000 is responsive, and there's nothing that would impede signing a contract with that particular bidder,
No,
other than our appropriation, right?
pretty much.
Okay. All right.
I have a couple questions.
Sure.
On the landfill in general, since you're here. At what point is it a marketable piece of property? And are there limitations to it? I mean, we've talked about ball fields down there. That Field of Dreams project was one of them. What do you see with that, Chris? What's the status of its condition as far as the health of the land? The health of the land.
The land could be used for different things, but unfortunately, the legislature would have to change something, what was it, an act of, when we got money to cap it from the state.
Right.
They put a restriction on it that said it could only be used for passive recreation. And that's kind of been a bugaboo, when thinking about what they like to do with it. So that limits what we can do there.
Where does a solar field fit into it? I mean, that's obviously not passive recreation,
No.
but.
I'll let Alan
Yeah.
that one.
So there's no, as Chris said, there was a restriction placed on the landfill. I think it was 1994. The city got a grant to cap the landfill as part of it. That was one of the conditions they put the deed restriction on. There's a number of communities in Massachusetts where the same thing happened. And at least as far as solar projects, the communities are trying to work together with the state to come up with a way to get that off of there, whether it's, I'm sure that you could write a scope so that the developers would pay for it. So I'm not familiar with Leominster specifically in terms of there's been any discussions. Over the years, I've probably gotten 10 calls from, well, maybe more than that, but 10 different projects. Water park, solar, baseball field. We were part of the team that put the baseball field together. Let's see, a mall. So there's been a number of things that have come up. One of the things with solar park, and I've done 40 large-scale solar arrays now in New England. And there's always been the issue, is there enough revenue that would come from a solar array that would make, if you put it in, it would be a 30-year commitment to do that. And so I think there's always been the question, is it the best use for that property? It's the gateway to the city. It's certainly not precluded. The issue about the restriction on the deed is something the city would have to deal with. But you can put it, technically there aren't any challenges, you'd have to deal with the fact that it's a landfill. But, and just for what it's worth, I put a notebook together, I got all those calls over the years, and finally I said at some point I'm going to retire, and I probably shouldn't have all of this in my head. So we put a notebook together that really was from the beginning. So every single document, the document I was just referring to regarding the deed, every single approval, every plan, the process of somebody said, well, what would I have to do in order to put something on a landfill? So we just put it in a notebook and then ultimately provided it to the city. I think Wendy was here early, she has a copy. So if someone said, hey, I want the plans for the landfill, or I want something from the landfill, it's on a thumb drive and you could hand it, 20 years of history to somebody if they had any questions of the landfill.
Thank you, that's great,
Sure.
appreciate it. Thank you, Mark.
Okay, so as the chairman of finance, it'd be my position to grant, I guess we have to amend it first, right?
Yeah, we're all set, guys, thank you.
All set?
Thank you.
Thank you for listening.
Okay, we're back in session. I'll yield the floor to the Chairman of Finance.
I guess I would entertain a motion to amend C-16 to increase the amount of the appropriation from $200,000 to $243,000.
Okay, seconded. All those in any questions on the amendment? All those in favor of the amendment, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0. Communication 16 has been amended. Mr. Chairman, do you have a report?
Yes, Mr. President, it would be my position to grant the C-16 as amended. I'll ask you to check with my committee members.
I yield the floor to the clerk, Councilor Pauline Cormier.
I agree.
Third amendment, Councilor David Cormier.
I also agree.
Mr. Chairman, please qualify.
Yes, Mr. President, the unanimous recommendation of finance is to grant C-16 as amended.
Councilors heard the recommendation read to grant communication 16. Are there any questions or comments on the floor? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0. The communication has been granted. Does the chairman have an order?
Yes, Mr. President, in order that the sum of $243,000 be appropriated to the landfill expense account, same to be transferred from the stabilization fund. Move for the adoption of the order.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councilors heard the recommendation read. Again, are there any questions? If not, all those in favor of that recommendation, please indicate by saying yea.
Yea.
Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, the order's been adopted. Thank you. We now move on to communication 17. Is the chairman ready to report?
Yes, Mr. President, C-17, Dean J. Mazzarella, Mayor, relative to the appropriation of $26,000 to the election and registration expense account, same to be transferred from the stabilization fund, RE, election-related additional expenses. Attached to the communication is a letter from our city clerk requesting that the mayor send a communication down in the amount of $22,445 for expenses associated with early voting for November election and the November election itself. There's a whole breakdown of how that $22,445 was arrived at. And in response to that, the mayor sent us the communication before us. It would be my position to grant C-17, and I ask you to check with members of my committee, Mr.
I
President.
yield the floor to the clerk, Councilor Pauline Cormier.
I agree.
Third member, Councilor David Cormier.
I also agree.
Mr. Chairman, please qualify.
Yes, Mr. President, it would be the unanimous recommendation of finance to grant C-17.
This will require a two-thirds vote for confirmation. Are there any questions or comments? Councilor Shalfo Zephyr.
Yeah, thank you very much. Through the chair to the finance chair, I think, are we amending this? Have you asked us to amend it to 26,000?
No, that was the communication.
That was a communication?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All set?
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? If not, this will be a yea or nay vote, excuse me, just a regular vote. All those in favor of granting communication 17, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0. The communication has been granted. Does the chairman have an order?
Yes, Mr. President, in order that the sum of $26,000 be appropriated to the election and registration expense account, same to be transferred from the stabilization fund, RE, election-related additional expenses. Move for the adoption of the order.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councilors heard their recommendation read. Are there any comments? If not, all those in favor of adopting the order, please indicate by saying yea.
Yea.
Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, the order has been adopted. Mr. Chairman, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr.
We now move on, you're welcome. We now move on to legal affairs, beginning with communication 1. Is the chairman ready to report?
I am, Mr. President. Communication 1, Mayor Dean J. Mazzarella requests that the City Council approve petition Communication 1 and authorize the mayor on behalf of the city to petition the Massachusetts General Court for special legislation substantially in the form as set forth below, relating to the city making payment on a certain unpaid bill to Royal Steam Heater Company, provided, however, that the General Court may make clerical or editorial changes of form only to the bill unless the mayor approves amendments to the bill before enactment by the General Court, and provided further that the mayor is hereby authorized to approve amendments which shall be within the scope of the general public objectives of this petition. We did receive a couple of emails from the school department. There's one from the, I believe, the person in charge of maintenance. He sent an email to the superintendent. It says, Paula, as I understand, the outstanding balance owed to Royal Steam was for numerous services provided years ago. I don't believe there was any disagreement as to the service charges. The invoices were not paid because the annual limit for services provided by that vendor was exceeded. The invoices are legitimate and should be paid for services provided. And it's from Tony, addressed to Paula Deacon, dated September 21st, 2018. We also received an email from the superintendent, Paula Deacon, dated September 21st, 2018. Indicates the school department supports the city's motion to pay Royal Steam for services provided years ago. The services were completed satisfactorily, and we have no concern about paying the outstanding balance owed. We thank the city council for resolving this matter. Respectfully, Paula Deacon, Superintendent. We also received a copy of I believe what the mayor is indicating, it will be the complete text that would be sent to the State House, and that reads, "Dear members of the City Council, I respectfully request the authorization to file a home rule petition providing as follows. An act authorizing the City of Leominster to make payment on a certain unpaid school department bill to Royal Steam Heater Company. Respectfully, Dean J. Mazzarella." So at this point, Mr. President, I am prepared to go forward and recommend approving Communication 1, but I would ask you to poll my committee. I know there were concerns raised.
Thank you. I'll yield the floor to Councilor Frida, the clerk.
I certainly want to see the bill paid. I'm still concerned about the language, and we probably won't know that till it actually gets on the floor at the State House. I'm going to support it, but I'm making a request that we get a copy of that the first time it's presented at the State House so we can read what it says.
I think that's a good idea.
Thank you.
I mean, whether we have to send it to the representative and the senator so that they're both aware of it.
So for a point of information, the representative has indicated that she will give us a copy of that communication before she brings it to Boston.
Okay.
All right? Does it work? I'll say,
That's fine
Council.
then.
Thank you.
So I support it.
Thank you. Council Bonanza?
I support it.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, please qualify.
We have a unanimous recommendation of Legal Affairs to support Communication 1.
Council, sir, the recommendation read to grant Communication 1. Are there any comments or questions on the floor? Council Feckley.
I didn't seem to have a couple of the referrals, so I'm wondering, do we have the bill? Do I not have it? I don't remember ever seeing how much this bill was.
I yield the floor back to the chairman. We don't have a bill, just so you know. We don't have the bill, we just have a letter.
I think the problem is that it's not, I think it's an unpaid balance. I
Okay.
don't think it's one particular bill.
Yeah.
Is what it is.
All right. I mean, I guess that's, in the, this is all about. The spirit of it is to pay whatever's remaining, so I guess the amount really isn't the main issue.
Right. I don't
The main issue
believe
is
it's a
just
significant amount.
Bringing it down to zero balance.
We have
Okay.
the chairman of finance for schools in here. If you want to recess, we can ask him if it's an issue. Councilor Feckley?
He says he knows the ballpark, so yeah, I think, I would like that information, actually.
Make a motion to
If you
recess?
get it easily, yes, yeah.
Seconded, thank you. All those in favor? We're in recess. Mr. Stetser, can you just join us for 1 second? Sure. You right at the mic's fine, that's fine. Oh, here, sure.
So I don't know the exact balance. I believe it was in the neighborhood of $60,000. And it's not clear to me if it was a matter of exceeding a total or the contract ending on the last day of December and work continuing into January and February, because there were boiler repairs that needed to be made for the schools, which were made, and were made satisfactorily. And then, one way or another, I've forgotten how many years ago this is now, but one way or another, some of the details of what's required to have the authority to pay the bill weren't there, so it has not been able to be paid.
You've jogged my memory. We've discussed this, and I think it was $65,000.
65, yeah. That's right around there, yeah.
And it's-
Is that coming out of your account, or is there a special appropriation?
So I don't know where we stand on that exactly. The school department has been, I know that as of the end of this year, we still had that on our books. The city did not. I don't know what has happened at the end of the year, June 30th this year. School department was starting to think that this just wasn't going to happen. So it's possible we've taken it off. We can put it back on. I'm sure, I don't know exactly, but we'll be able to deal with it if it's coming out of ours.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions?
I just have,
Go ahead.
Michael, do you know if interest is accruing on that balance?
Did you see, I don't believe we've seen any
I can
interest.
answer that question. They're not gonna get interest. They're gonna be lucky to get paid.
Okay.
So, that would be the height of all audacity.
Okay.
I mean, the vendor has, made repeated requests to try and resolve it. Has not taken any legal action. I don't know that he could get anywhere with legal action, but they've continued to work for us. So we're just trying to get them paid for work they did.
Thank you,
very
appreciate
much.
that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Council's back in session, Mr. Chairman.
The recommendation remains to,
Okay,
we got a discussion after.
right after.
Yeah, the recommendation remains to grant communication one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council, sir, the recommendation read to grant communication one. Are there any comments or questions? What's that? Council Frida?
I might change my position. The Ward 1 councilor brings up an excellent point. We don't even know how much it is. We're being asked to pay a bill, being asked to send it to the State House to be read. We don't know how much it's gonna be, what the number is. And it also says here, and this is my point, I mean, the chairman believes that it's a number of bills. It clearly says right here, approve the petition, where did I just see that? On a certain unpaid bill. That indicates to me it's one bill. Is it one bill, is it a number of bills, and how much is it? I mean, I think, and we also have the comptroller, do we get anything back from him? So we don't even have the information from the comptroller to tell us whether it's out of the school department or where it's coming from.
Mr.
And
Chairman?
I know that's after the fact. We're just asking the state to allow us to pay for it, but if the state comes back and asks us questions, which they've done before, we're not gonna look too intelligent if we don't have the answers.
Oh, I think the answers really are to come from the school. I mean, they requested the work, they had the work done. It clearly is a situation where it was an innocent mistake. And the work was done, it was done some time ago. It's by a vendor that obviously has been very patient and continues to do work for the school. So, I mean, we can bathe in semantics about this all night, but it's been on the agenda for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, and these questions are just coming up now. So my recommendation remains.
Through the chair,
Thank you.
my questions aren't just coming up now. I mean, we've discussed this, and we have referrals that I requested, and we don't have them back. So, I mean, I think the comptroller would have told us something. And this is, I agree, it's an innocent mistake. We have a new superintendent. We have a number of new school committee members. So I understand all that. So it's not really their fault, and they're under their watch. But this is the 4th time we sent something to the state to pay a bill that we haven't done right. And that's my concern, because after I saw the last one and what we were asking the state to do, I'm concerned about what it looks like. So it's not a question of semantics, it's a question of fact.
Well,
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I
Mr.
think
Chairman?
some of the referrals at this point, I think are semantics. I think the comptroller has little to nothing to do with this. I also think that the purchasing department, again, this was a mistake, and it wasn't a mistake made by the purchasing department. So, again, I think we're still in the same boat.
Council Bonanza?
Yeah, we're not gonna get a referral from the comptroller, we all know that, let's let's be realistic. We know what his philosophy is on these. Yeah, I'm not real pleased about this. I mean, I actually happened to bump into Mr. Spiliotis, who's the chairman of the third reading committee in the legislature, and he specifically asked me about one of these, not this one, but a prior one. It doesn't make the legislature all that happy either. We're not the only place that does this, by the way. We've made mistakes, and it's happened to other cities and towns. Look, bill or bills, it's amount owed, and what the chairman of finance from the school committee suggested comports exactly with a discussion that I had with him about a number of school issues back a number of months ago. Yeah, I want to see these people get paid. I mean, they did the work. Do they share some of the fault? Yeah, I'm sure that they do. And there's plenty of fault to go around, but let's get them paid. It's the right thing to do. So I'm in favor of moving forward with this.
And I want to point out, too, that the facts behind this are fixing furnaces in the middle of winter for public schools. So are they going to walk off? We're penalizing a vendor that did not walk off the job. So I appreciate some of the concerns raised, but I mean, this is what it is.
Right. Councilor Feckley, you haven't spoken yet.
I do appreciate the counselor at large is to my far left concern. And I believe my memory serves that I did ask for a copy of the bill, maybe not the last time it was on the agenda, but the time before. So, but that being said, I'm satisfied that the committeeman has indicated to us that it's in that vicinity. I'm not happy it's that much money, but and then of course that was backed up by the Ward 4 counselor. But if we owe the money and that work was done, then it's our duty to pay it. So I would support it.
Thank you. Anyone that hasn't spoken yet, if you'd like to speak? If not, Councilor Frida.
To say that the controller has nothing to do with this is really not too accurate, I don't think. He would at least know what the number is. And granted, we're not getting something back from him, we probably won't. But he would have the answer as to the cost. He would have an answer as to going out to bid, and Greg Chapdelaine would have that. I mean, these are pretty simple things. I know that the work, the company didn't walk off the job. It's in the middle of winter. There are provisions set up for that they can do this work. These are issues. This has happened a number of times. There's a bid process, and it's being overlooked. I'm going to support this, but I want to see what's read, because it clearly states on the state level the last time that the city council made the error. And I'm not going to have my name to something after the fact that says we made the mistake because we didn't follow up on previous positions. So I think everybody on here that we asked for referrals is important, and we didn't get the referrals back. Doesn't mean that they don't have the answers. It means that we don't have them.
I'm going to take it upon myself to get an itemized bill for you. We'll share with the council, so we'll know exactly what happened, what transpired, the dates, that type of thing. So I'll ask the school superintendent to put that together for us.
And what
all right?
happened with the bid process? Maybe Greg Chapdelaine
Right.
can answer that question.
We'll see. Okay? All right. Any other questions or comments? If not, all those in favor of granting communication 1, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, it's been granted. Okay. We do have a document that each of us has to sign before we leave tonight regarding that, okay? So if you can just see the clerk right after the meeting, it's appreciated. We now move on to 7-19 under legal affairs. Is the chairman ready to report?
I am, Mr. President. 719, Mark C. Bedanza and Susan Shalafo Zephyr request to delete Section 216 of the revised ordinances for the city of Leominster and insert in its place a new Section 216 as follows. Section 216, regular meetings, except as hereinafter stated, regular meetings of the city council shall be held on the second and fourth Monday evenings of each month at 7:00 p.m. Whenever a meeting falls on a legal holiday, it shall be held the following night at the same time. Whenever a meeting falls on the evening before New Year's Day, it shall be held on the next night following the holiday at the same time. No meeting shall be held during the week of Christmas. We had a public hearing on this earlier. My position is to grant petition 719. I'd ask you to poll my committee.
I yield the floor to the clerk. Councilor Frida.
I agree.
Third member, Councilor Bonanza.
I'm in favor.
Mr. Chairman, please qualify.
So unanimous recommendation is to grant petition 719.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councilors heard the recommendation to grant 7-19. Are there any comments or questions? This will require a 2/3 vote. This will be a roll call vote, beginning with Councilor David Cormier.
Yay.
Councilor Pauline Cormier.
Yay.
Councilor Odenger.
Yay.
Councilor Bonanza.
Yay.
Councilor Feckley.
Yay.
Councilor Shalfo Zephyr.
Yay.
Councilor Dombrowski.
Yay.
Councilor Frida.
Yay.
I shall record as yea by a vote of 9-0. The petition has been granted. And I want to thank each of you for putting this before us. Thank you. We now move on to 9-19. Is the chairman ready to report?
I am. Petition 919, Mark C. Bedanza and Susan Shalafo Zephyr, request to amend the City Council Rules of Procedure, namely Rule 1, meetings by changing the time of Monday evening meetings from 7:30 p.m. to 7 o'clock p.m. Before I get into my recommendation, we did have a public hearing. At the public hearing, one of the co-petitioners had voiced possibly a preference to amending this. So I don't know, Council Bedanza, if you want to
I
make
yield
that
the floor to
amendment
Mr.
now.
Councilor Bonanza.
That would be to add the language to the existing petition in conformance with section 2-16 of the revised ordinances for the city of Leominster.
2-16.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, do you agree?
I'll second that motion.
Okay. Any questions on the motion? This is for an amendment. All those in favor, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, communicate, 9-19 has been amended. Mr. Chairman.
Recommendation is to grant petition 919 as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councilors heard the recommendation read. Are there any comments or questions? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate by saying yay.
Yay.
Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0. 9-19 has been granted. Thank you very much. We now move on to 10-19. Is the chairman ready to report?
I am. Petition 1019, New View Liabilities to Assets. We had a joint public hearing this evening with the planning board, and the manager of New View Liabilities came down, explained everything to us. If it were up to me, I would be moving to grant this tonight. I think there's some procedure we've got to follow where we have to wait for the planning board report. So the recommendation would be further time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Without polling your committee, you're all set?
You can poll.
Councilor Frida?
I agree with that.
Councilor Bonanza?
Yeah, I would agree.
Thank you. Councilors heard that recommendation read to grant to further time on 10-19. Are there any comments or questions on the floor? Just for clarification, we got boggled up a little bit with information shared as a result of the planning director retiring, moving on, and the new interim moving into place and not taking the bull by the horns. And so what happened was it's been bounced around the city hall a little bit. I'm glad to see it's right now on the lap of the health department, who at least has a handle on the houses that are in question. So I'm looking, we enjoyed tonight the joint meeting with the planning board, looking forward to their advisory recommendation to us, and we'll take it up at the next meeting. All those in favor of the recommendation for further time, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, by a vote of 9-0, further time has been awarded. We now move on to 11-19. Is the chairman ready to report?
I am. Petition 1119, Heather Brantover and 10 registered voters accept Danielle Drive as an accepted road in the city of Leominster. This is another one of those that I'm not quite sure if there's anything we can do at this point. We'd need referrals from DPW, and the referral we got back was basically indicating to us that the petitioner needed to provide more specific information.
Right.
So under those circumstances, just do some quick subcommittee work, see where people's preferences are. I'll start with Council Frida.
We can ask the clerk, because we've done this before, so there should be a file somewhere on it. And see if we could get some information that way, but I don't think there was anything we could do.
We can research. You do. There is a file. It is available
Yeah,
on this one.
I was the Ward 3 counselor, it came up a
Yeah.
couple of times.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if the committee can take a peek at it,
Okay.
you know, and maybe share with the petitioner.
Council Bedanz, any thoughts?
I'd recommend table for study.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Mr. Chairman?
No, that's fine with me. I'll table petition 1119 for study, and if we could, how big is the file? I'm just asking the clerk, how big is the file relative to Daniel Drive?
Big.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all right, so we'll,
And which ward is this in?
3.
Ward 3.
3.
Okay, so that's a Ward 3 counselor, if you want to spearhead that with the petitioner.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And let him know the significance of the file,
Mhm.
you know, and the history of it. Okay?
Okay, thank you,
All
Mr.
set.
President.
Thank you. Councilors heard the recommendation to take 11-19 and table for study. Are there any further comments or questions on the floor? If not, all those in favor of that recommendation, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, table for study has taken place on 11-19. Thank you very much. Thank you for your work tonight, too. We now move on to public service. We have 8-19. Is the chairwoman ready to report?
Yes, Mr. President. 819, Gail P. Feckley and Susan Shalafuzeffer request to reduce the speed limit on Burridge Avenue from Main Street to Pierce Street to 20 miles per hour. The last time we had this discussion, we could only do 25 miles per hour, and I didn't look too deeply into it, but the reason we didn't do 20 miles, I knew there was a reason, because I was looking to do 20 when I put the petition in for 25. But the 20 has to be declared a safety zone. And I'm not quite sure how much of an area you can take in. Boston did a number of areas and regions on that. And Boston's different than us, obviously, but I'll, if I could, defer to the petitioners.
Sure, absolutely. Let me go to Council Feckley first.
Okay. So, yes, we did receive this letter from KP Law dated October 2016, and it does in fact say that the City Council can establish designated safety zones on public ways that are not state highways and with a speed limit of 20 miles per hour. My argument would be that Burridge Ave is very unique amongst many of the streets in the city, and especially in North Leominster. Just about everybody that travels that road on Route 13 knows that it's a cutoff, uses it at some point in their week, I would say. Very close to an elementary school where, you know, about 700 children attend. I would say that it would be worth it for us to see if we could designate this as a safety zone, especially coming off of Main Street, either taking a right or a left. You go immediately down a very steep hill that has a tremendous umbrella overhang of trees. And it's, you know, in bad weather, it's dark. At night, it's darker. When you come down off of Main Street, you really need to brake in order to even stay with the 30 mile an hour, because that, and then you hit, you know, the flat zone. Not to mention, also throw in that Burridge Ave lately and in the past has been experiencing tremendous water issues. During the winter, they get pools of water in that area that freeze. It's very dangerous. The lawns of the houses that are right at the end of that hill are very close to the street. And there are several young children that live in that area. So I think as far as safety is concerned, I can't think of a better area that needs special attention than Burridge Ave.
Thank you. Councilor Shalafo-Zephyr?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, I echo what the Ward 1 councilor has said, and I am really very happy that this Copeland and Page, Brian Riley mentioned in his letter, that there's a new statute 18, I guess section 18B, that also requires local acceptance to implement. And it authorizes a local city council to establish designated safety zones on public ways that are specific to their community. So I think this makes a lot of sense for all the reasons that Councilor Feckley said, and also because of the specifics of Burridge Ave. Not only is it, it's got the overhang, it's got the steep hill, it doesn't have sidewalks. And the you know, each side of the road is crumbling. So for those reasons, I think, and for the reason that it is a major cut through between people speeding on Pierce and people on Main Street, I completely support this and would ask everybody here to support it as well. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Council Bonanza?
Okay, so based on Mr. Riley's opinion, we would have to, before we could establish the 20-mile-an-hour zone, we would have to accept Chapter 90, Section 18B. So I don't know, you know, I mean, the way this is written, he's the city solicitor, we can't establish a 20-mile-an-hour zone without first accepting the state statute. So my suggestion would be, if you wanted to further time the petition and then put into work the process of accepting Section 18B, that would seem to be the logical way to proceed.
Good point. Thank you. Councilor Dombrowski.
I think that going along with that logic, I think his opinion to me seems a little unclear. I don't know if we can establish safety zones piecemeal or we've got to do it all at once. So I think maybe we should try to get that question answered as well. So whether 18...
Do we have other, so my question back is, are you responding in consideration of the city, the entire city, or just that neighborhood, that street?
I'm wondering whether 18B allows you to designate safety zones piecemeal or if you have to do it for the entire city at once.
All right, we can ask that question tomorrow. Be glad to. And give you plenty of time to co-author the petition necessary.
Yep.
All right, Councilor Frida?
Yeah, my recommendation would be to table it and have a meeting with the police chief and find out exactly what, I think it's a little more complicated than that as far as creating a safety zone. I think the counselor to my right probably correct on if you can do a piecemeal or if it has to be the whole city, it has to be a bigger region, but it's certainly a good idea. And I think as many as we can in the city for 20 miles an hour would be appropriate. So that my recommendation would be to have a meeting with the chief, get more details on the regulations, and do this as quickly as possible.
I yield the floor back to the chairman.
Well, we did get an email from the chief on this dated September 21st. And I mean, my reading of it is almost that he's not aware of 18B. I mean, he writes, they are correct, not legal unless a full engineering and then with approval
necessary.
of Mass.
Right.
Yeah, so yeah, I think 18B kind of took that away and simplified it.
Right.
So.
Well, there seems to be a little
Councilor
question.
Bonanza, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
There seems to be a little question. We're going to have to get some clarification
Right.
from the city solicitor as to how we establish safety zones. So, I mean, obviously, we can't move forward with the petition tonight, that's for sure, but.
Okay. Councilor Feckley.
My thought process on this is that what you're saying now about all of this is going to take a long time. This is not something that's going to happen overnight. These residents need some relief now. We heard from some of them tonight that said that they would be pleased with any reduction of the speed and perhaps a flashing light, which I know we wouldn't vote on that. That would be something we'd have to work with the DPW on. So I need to also defer to the co-petitioner, but my recommendation would be that we amend the petition to 25 miles an hour, which we could approve this evening. And then my co-petitioner and I would work on investigating whether or not we could in fact designate it as a safety zone.
Right, what is it right now? 30?
It's 30, because it's densely populated.
So, Council Shalfo Zephyr, do you agree to that?
Absolutely.
Okay, so so do you have a motion to amend it?
Yes. Motion to amend that the reduce the speed limit on Burge Ave from Main Street to Pierce Street to 25 miles per hour.
I'll second that.
Seconded by Council Bonanza. Are there any questions on the amendment? If not, all those in favor of the amendment, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed by a vote of 9-0. 8-19 has been amended to 25 miles per hour. Mr. Chairman, do you have a report?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Madam Chairman, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit tired.
That's all right.
I was supposed to be
Yep.
sleeping right now.
I had to stop
It's a
and
busy
think because
Johnny Appleseed Festival, thank God, it's over for now.
the recommendation is to grant 819 as amended.
Thank you. Council, sir, the recommendation read to grant 8-19 as amended by the Madam Chair. Are there any questions or comments on the floor? This will be a roll call vote, beginning with Councilor Frida.
Yay.
Councilor Dobrowski.
Yay.
Councilor Shalfo Zephyr.
Yay.
Councilor Feckley.
Yay.
Councilor Bonanza.
Yay.
Councilor Odenger.
Yay.
Councilor Pauline Cormier.
Yay.
Councilor David Cormier.
Yay.
I shall record yea by a vote of 9-0. 8-19 has been granted as amended. Great questions raised, let's not let them go. We're still gonna go to the city solicitor and move forward with some answers for you ladies, and also potential new petitions as well.
And this perhaps
Okay.
could be a benefit to some other areas in other wards, too.
Okay, we're gonna establish a, thank you very much. We're gonna correct on that, that's for sure. 8-19 is gonna require a public hearing, Council Frida.
12-19, National Grid, install one singular owned pole on Church Street, beginning at a point approximately 120 feet northeast of the center line.
One
of-
second, okay? Excuse me. Okay, we need a public hearing on this one here, correct? Yes. Okay, we need a public hearing established also on 8-19. And we're looking for October
Okay.
9th at 7:05 PM. Excuse me. So if you can make that motion, we'll vote on public hearing.
Okay, back to 819.
Yes, please.
We need to establish a public hearing on October 9th, 2018 at 7:05.
Thank you. All those in favor of that recommendation, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, the public hearing has been established for 10-9 at 7:05 PM in the council chambers on 8-19. Thank you. We'll now move on to 12-19.
12-19, National Grid, install one singular owned pole on Church Street, beginning at a point approximately 120 feet northeast of the center line of the intersection of Merriam Avenue and continuing approximately 15 feet in an east direction. The recommendation is for further time, and we need to establish a hearing date on October 9th at 7:10 PM.
Thank you. Councilors heard the recommendation read for further time on 12-19, establishing a hearing for 10-19, 10-19?
10:09.
10-9, I'm sorry. 10-9 at 7:10 PM in the council chambers. Any questions on that? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed by a vote of 9-0. Excuse me. Further time has been awarded to 12-19 with the hearing scheduled for 10-9 at 7:10 PM. Thank you. We now move on to old business. Are there any items under old business? Council Feckley.
Mr. President, I wonder if there had been any movement on the question regarding who has, I hate to use the word jurisdiction, but jurisdiction over the planning board director. The city, the mayor, the planning board. Question was asked at the last meeting.
If I may. Mr. Sousa and I have been in communication as recently as this past Saturday on that. And the interim is no longer employed by the city, I believe. So what's happening is that I think they're trying to aggressively figure out who the next person will be, and then that has to be worked out between the planning board and the mayor. As far as the authority, I can't qualify that this evening, I apologize. Okay? You're welcome. Any other items under old business? Council Frida?
Through the chair, I was just going to respond. I also had some conversations with the planning board chair, and his feelings were strong that they have jurisdiction over
I
hiring.
believe at the end of the day, that will be correct. I want to make sure I give you the right answer.
I think that's in
Okay. All right.
ordinances.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any other items under old business? Okay, we now move on to new business. We have an election order. Madam Clerk?
Commonwealth of Massachusetts, City of Leominster, State Election Order, November 6th, 2018, voted that meetings of the citizens of this city qualified to vote in the state election shall be held on Tuesday, the 6th day of November, 2018, from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. for the purpose of casting their votes in the state election for the candidates of political parties for the following offices: Senator in Congress for this Commonwealth, Governor for this Commonwealth, Lieutenant Governor for this Commonwealth, Attorney General for this Commonwealth, Secretary of State for this Commonwealth, Treasurer and Receiver General for this Commonwealth, Auditor for this Commonwealth, Representative in Congress, 2nd District, Counselor, 7th District, Senator in General Court, Worcester and Middlesex District, Representative in General Court, 4th District, District Attorney, Middle District, Clerk of Courts, Worcester North District, Register of Deeds, Worcester District. It is further ordered that the following polling places are designated by the City Council: Ward 1, Precinct A, Skyview Middle School, 500 Kennedy Way; Ward 1, Precinct B, Skyview Middle School, 500 Kennedy Way; Ward 1, Precinct C, Skyview Middle School, 500 Kennedy Way; Ward 2, Precinct A, Francis Drake Elementary School, 95 Escalade Avenue; Ward 2, Precinct B, Francis Drake Elementary School, 95 Escalade Avenue; Ward 2, Precinct C, Francis Drake Elementary School, 95 Escalade Avenue; Ward 3, Precinct A, Fraternal Order of the Eagles Hall, 456 Litchfield Street; Ward 3, Precinct B, Fraternal Order of Eagles Hall, 456 Litchfield Street; Ward 3, Precinct C, Fraternal Order of Eagles Hall, 456 Litchfield Street; Ward 4, Precinct A, Senior Citizens Drop-In Center, 5 Pond Street; Ward 4, Precinct B, Leominster Veterans Center, 100 West Street; Ward 4, Precinct C, Leominster Veterans Center, 100 West Street; Ward 5, Precinct A, Auditorium, City Hall, 25 West Street; Ward 5, Precinct B, Auditorium, City Hall, 25 West Street; Ward 5, Precinct C, First Baptist Church of Leominster, 23 West Street. Hereof fail not and make return of this warrant with your doings thereon at the time and place of said voting, given under our hands and places to sign. And the order will be placed in public places as follows: City Hall, Veterans Center, Police Department, Fire Stations, Library, Recreation Department, DPW, School Department, Cemetery Department, Wastewater Treatment Plant, Emergency Management, Montechusett Opportunity Council, Spanish Center, Post Office.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
If I may.
Mr. President?
The election order is referred to the Chairwoman of Ways and Means first.
Mr. President,
We have one suggested amendment by the.
right, it was
Clerk.
read correctly, but state primaries is mentioned twice. It should be state election, but it was read correctly by the clerk.
Okay, we're good? Okay, it will be reprinted. Do we need to amend that?
Also another one, too? Okay.
Registry of Deeds, good.
They're reversed. Clerk of Courts and Register of Deeds is reversed. Should be, Clerk of Courts is Worcester District, Register of Deeds is Worcester North District.
Okay, you have that? Good? Okay, all right. So we're amending it right here, Madam Chair. It'll be reprinted? Okay, okay.
So my recommendation would be to adopt the state election order for November 6, 2018 as amended, and I would ask you to poll my committee.
Okay, do we have to amend that first? Yeah, we're gonna amend it first.
Okay.
Then get a motion to amend, and then we'll second it.
Right, so motion to amend.
Thank you.
To changes
Second. Thank you.
state election twice, and then the clerk of courts and register of deeds to be switched.
Thank you. And that's seconded by Council Bonanza. Any questions on the amendment? If not, all those in favor of the amendment, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, it has been amended. I yield the floor back to the chairwoman.
Thank you, Mr. President. My recommendation
Bless you.
would be to adopt the state election order, November 6, 2018, as amended, and I would ask you to poll my committee.
Thank you. Councilor Frida?
Yes, I agree.
Third member, Councilor Dabrowski?
I agree.
Thank you. Please requalify.
We have a unanimous recommendation to adopt the state election order for November 6, 2018, as amended.
Thank you. Councilors heard the recommendation read to adopt the election order as amended. Are there any questions or comments on the floor? If not, all those in favor, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed by a vote of 9-0, the election order has been adopted. Thank you. I have discussion under regarding Burridge Avenue. And Councilor Feckley, we were communicating subliminally on that one.
We did.
It's horrible. So I'll, if you want to just share with the city council in the city what's going on, and I'm not sure if we would even be involved with this, but at least some kind of show of support to
Right.
the resolve.
So I have had some, actually, I spoke extensively with the DPW director, Ray Racine, this week. And prior to that, I had spoken to the conservation director as well regarding this area. And I think this was one of the first things that I heard about as I was out and about campaigning, and I believe it might have been the Pulteney's. They were out walking their dogs, and they indicated to me that they had water issues from time to time. And then I don't think that they had the kind of issues that we've had this season with the monsoon that we had about a month ago, and then the extensive rain that we had the other day left over from the hurricane. But it's a situation that exists, that could happen at any time. It's not just a little bit of water, it's flooding coming, off from the, the stone walls. Their houses abut Manusnock Country Club, and Manusnock, although they seem to have been cooperating as much as possible. For example, they were in communication with the conservation director that they were going to empty their detention pond before it rained the other day. But even with that, they still received, I'm sure everybody saw the pictures in the paper, a tremendous amount of rain.
The video clip on Facebook was really scary.
So I did speak to the department, the DPW director, and they had a meeting, all the heads, the Board of Health, the fire, police, mayor, conservation, DPW. They did have a meeting a couple of weeks ago, and it's been determined that they're going to ask Woodward and Curran, Mr. Benavides was here this evening, he's this, the engineer for that does a lot of work for the city, to do a study as to what can be possibly done to fix this problem, or at least give these people some relief. It might not be an easy fix, and it could be a very expensive fix, but they're going to look into it. They're going to try to do as much as possible to alleviate part of the water issue down there. One bright spot is that mosquito control has made a commitment to go to the golf course and clean all of the drains. They have made that commitment to do that this fall. So that will not totally alleviate the problem, but it will give some relief. They're going to do all the drainage. Also, anybody that would want mosquito control to come in their property and try to open up some of the channels certainly can. Mosquito control does not need an easement. They can go right on your property and do that. So I do have the phone number for mosquito control, and it's 508-393-3055. And from what I understand from the DPW director, they're very, very responsive, and they'd be, more than willing to come down and see what they could do as far as cleaning out the drains on individuals' properties. So again, to give some level of relief, because the study and whatever comes afterwards is going to take a while. So we'll hope that we have an easy winter, we don't have a lot of rain, but we have no control over that. So the other issue is I will be going down to meet with the DPW director this week, and I'm going to look at, to what limit of my knowledge, I'm going to be looking at the plans that he has, so I can at least have some kind of visual of what's underneath there as far as drainage and how big it is. And so then when there's discussions, when Woodward and Curran comes and does their presentation, we'll have some more information on it.
Great job.
Yeah. So, they have to have relief. It's just nobody should have to, stay up all night wondering if their house is going to float away.
We're just shedding light, but if there's anything I can do or the city councils can do, we're right there with you. We'll be looking for a resolve. It's horrible. Yeah, it shouldn't, just a tough situation down there. So thank you for staying the course with that. Thank you. Councilor Frida?
Through the chair to the Ward 1 councilor. I recall, and I don't know exactly what it was, recall some issue with the golf course years ago, whether it was the removal of a pipe. I can't remember what it was, but I remember it being on the conservation agenda.
Yep.
I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I am. I think that was when I first started on the council, and yeah, I do recall that. That is still a matter that is being discussed. The new conservation director is in communication with the Manusnack Country Club, and she's going to be discussing that with them.
It seems to have gotten worse after that.
Yeah, well, I think the major issue is that the drainage pipes don't have the capacity to pick up all the water as it comes down that way. So that's probably the main issue. So keeping them clean, keeping them, keeping the water moving is really, at this point, the best way to handle it. And then after Wood and Curran has their investigation, study, we'll have more information.
Great job.
Thank you.
Not easy being a ward counselor.
No.
It's a horrible situation you're in.
No, it's not that it's not easy.
It's tough. It's tough.
It's too bad that these, pull Burge Ave and they
Yep,
did it all.
absolutely. Yep.
They suffered.
My niece and her husband live on that street, so I'm privy to it. As you're living it, I'm hearing about it too. So good for you for staying the course on that. Thank you. Any other comments on Burge Ave? Okay, any other items under new business? Okay, we'll now move on to community calendar. I know we have Michael's Run coming up pretty soon. I can't remember the date on that. The signs are around town?
The 15th?
Somewhere around that.
It's usually
It's a
within a
sad day.
couple of weeks of the
Yeah, right after the J Festival.
Yeah.
So just check the signs out. That's a really important thing. And a lot of money is given to local groups dealing with people with mental illness, so that's an awesome program to get involved with. That Michael's Run. It's a great walk, and I know they all end up at the Eagles Hall afterwards for a little celebration and get together. I just want to thank everyone involved with the Johnny Appleseed Festival, the vendors, and also especially all the sponsors. City workers were great. I mean, we ran into a situation, I don't know if you guys know, but it rained in the early part of the morning, and then it stopped around 4-ish or so. We were down here a little after that, and the wind picked up, and it was horrible.
Yeah.
And it actually delayed the setup for a good solid hour in some cases. And without even asking, the next thing I knew, the emergency management team on their own went down and brought back a couple of pallets of sandbags to help us out. They were just fantastic. So, I mean, the volunteers are amazing. If I hadn't been down to the emergency management in a while, and I had a chance to go down there this afternoon. If you haven't been down there, and recently to go down there to see some of the things happening, it's just amazing what they've done with that building. It's like this major, think tank with IT in there and the whole thing. And the confirmation we had with that, the woman that came down, was it Mrs.
Yeah, Mary
Date?
Newton.
Was it Newton?
Last time.
I guess she's a shining star already down there, so there's a lot of great things happening. So, if you get a chance, make it a point. I think they have a breakfast down there on Saturday mornings, so you can pop in. And I know Jimmy's available, so if you want to call him directly, that'll work out too. Okay, we're going to now deal with table petitions upon which action is proposed. This is a matter before, Counselor, you're out of this one. You don't have to worry about this one.
I am.
Counselor Dombrowski.
I think there's a
Oh, I'm
question.
sorry. Look, you want me to go back to community
Please.
calendar? We're there.
Yep, thank
It's
you
all
very
yours.
much. Thank you very much. I just want to remind people that this Friday night is the police gala. Janessa McQuaid, the new homeless outreach person coordinator for the police department, along with Leslie Borges, who is the domestic violence victim coordinator. They have organized this gala at the Doubletree Hilton on Friday evening, and it's a big fundraiser for their programs. So I would encourage people who may not have bought tickets yet to contact the police department and please turn out for it. It should be a really nice evening.
Great. Sorry I can't make it. My grandson's playing at Assumption College against Shrewsbury Friday night, so it's a big game for him. Okay, thank you. Anything else?
On Saturday night, there's also a gala at Doubletree, St. Bernard's High School, for induction into the Hall of Fame, and there might, a lot of people that you might know, Nathan Bellata, Wayne Burnt, Karen Ledger from Holy Family, who's active there in St. Leo's, and I'm actually going in as well.
Congratulations. It's awesome.
So it's, and that'll be a fun night as well.
Good. Lots of things to do. Thank you. Okay, we'll now move on to table petitions. You have the floor to the acting chairwoman of Legal Affairs. Yes, you can, thank you. We'll be done after this, thank you.
39-18.
Thank you. Okay, perfect. Okay. Acting chair? Go ahead.
Table petitions upon which action is proposed. 39-18, Prime Wellness Centers. Grant a special permit to build a medical marijuana cultivation facility located at 1771 Lock Drive.
Do you wish to take this off the table for
Right.
action or disposition?
Right, well, if I could, I'd like to
Yes.
check with the other member of my,
Answer?
Yeah, I'm fine with taking it off the table.
Okay.
yeah, I
Counselor?
agree. So
Okay.
the recommendation would be to take it off the table?
Council, sir, the recommendation read to take 39-18 off the table for action and disposition. Are there any questions or comments? If not, all those in favor of that recommendation, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed, thank you. 39-18 is now before the committee. Does the chairwoman have a report?
Yes, 39-18, recommendation from the committee is to take it off the table and continue the public hearing on October 22nd, 2018 at 6:30.
Okay, and to take it off the table and give it further time until then, or table till then, or?
Yes,
Oh, want to give it further time to
further
keep it?
time.
Okay, thank you. Council, sir, the recommendation read to take 39-18 and give it further time and establish, we've already had the first hearing, correct? This is a continuation. This is a continuation of the hearing to October 22nd at 6:30 PM in the council chambers. Are there any comments or questions on the floor? If not, all those in favor of the recommendation, please indicate in the usual manner. Those opposed by a vote of 8-0. 39-18 has been given further time with an extension of the hearing to be reopened on October 22nd at 6:30. This will appear on the next calendar. Further time will be given again until we get to that date. All set? Motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Thank you. Okay. There used to be one underneath. They had it there.
The Leominster City Council meeting is brought to you by the generous support of the Service Oil Company, 345R Lancaster Street, Leominster, 978-466-1922.